Hey, so after a long break, I am back to making YouTube videos. The topic of today's video is based on a ton of emails I get from students that are just leaving school or new pros that are getting emails from clients or potential clients. And the big question is, should I take this job or not? There is a ton of stuff to consider. And a lot of times it's tough to know what to do. And so I have come up with a 5-step system that I go through when I'm evaluating whether you should take a job or not. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, we're going to go ahead and dive into my 5 steps. Should you take the job? Hopefully you guys find this informative. I've definitely used it over my career and it has helped out a ton. So here we go. Step number 1. It pays well. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, thanks a lot for telling me that, Captain Obvious. It pays well. Yeah, that's going to be a huge criteria. I just wanted to get this one out of the way. This one doesn't need much explanation. If it pays well, it's always going to be on the table, obviously. Unfortunately for illustrators, this one isn't typically one of the high-ranking options. And so the other ones become a little bit more important, but I do need to put it out there, for advertising jobs or, if you're working short-term for a movie studio or something like that, obviously the pay is going to make a difference. Not a big deal, not a big surprise, right? Okay, let's move on to number 2. Number 2, it offers creativity. This is a huge deal in terms of taking a job. If it offers you creativity in a way that maybe you're changing styles, or it gives you a chance to really kind of showcase what you got, it's going to definitely be a contributing factor to should you take the job. There was a job that I was offered early in my career. I think it was the second book that I did. So weird. It was about all these animals that were getting this nose popped off this kid's face, and it was being chased throughout the whole story. And while it's being chased, it's sneezing out all these animals. Such a bizarre story, but it offered such a great opportunity to do some creative storytelling. There was definitely nothing else out there like it. And I knew that there was nothing else out there like it. And so I dove in and did it. And that sort of springboarded the rest of my career, a lot of books after that, because it would just gave me a chance to sort of flex a little bit. So offers creativity. And I'll show you guys how to use all 5 of these. I just kind of want to go through one by one here first. All right, number 3, a broad reach. And so you'll start to see the theme come up as I go through all 5 of these, that you obviously want more than one of these. It's not just one of these criteria, but it's all of these. And these are the top 5 things that I use. And so that's kind of why I wanted to break them down. But a broad reach is definitely going to be something you want to lean into. If a product is going to be, like your illustration is going to be on a billboard. Early in my career, I did a billboard on the side of the freeway on Highway 101 in California. And it was a great opportunity. It didn't pay well. It wasn't that creative. But the reach was absolutely huge. I mean, thousands and thousands of cars going by every day. At that time in my career, I'd never had anything that big. And so that became the driving factor of whether I was going to take that job. Now, what you're seeing on screen here, a Cricket Magazine cover, I've done a number of covers for them. And you start to see how these things start to stack on top of each other. So, if I look to one, does it pay well? This job didn't pay well at all. Even the cover doesn't pay well. We're definitely not operating like they did back in Norman Rockwell days, where you'd get a ton of money based on the cost of living for doing a cover for a magazine or something like that. It's just not that way anymore, unfortunately. But the exchanges, they give me the creative freedom to do whatever I want to. Basically, they say, hey, we got a Halloween issue coming up, and I just need to do something with Halloween. And I've done a number of these jobs, and they're so much fun. So a lot of creativity, but the cool part is it's a broad reach. I always try different brushes or different techniques when I'm doing this. So the creativity is there in a number of different ways, but the reach is huge. And so I get to not only try something new, but I get it's seen by everybody, especially within the industry that I'm working in. So, going into children's books or working towards a specific genre, if you can all of a sudden be in front of all those buyers and get your work seen, it's going to be a huge deal. So didn't pay well, but the other two were up there pretty well. This next one, let's go ahead. Oh, I wanted to go ahead and talk about something here. I've done it. A ton of these different covers, and this is just another one of the Halloween ones. So you can see like it leaves space for the type and stuff at the top. So once you get some of these ones, if the pay is not that good, sometimes you can come back and start to get repeat clients where you can use them as promos. And so jobs like this, that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm looking to have maybe a series of images that go together, or some kind of consistency where, you know, I can connect the creativity. Now, maybe the client is not asking for that connection, but I'm thinking about it, like, how can I connect these things together? If there's a broad reach, maybe I can start to sell the series of images. Hopefully that makes sense. So I don't just think of something as a single image or a single job. I think, how can I connect it with other things? So number 4 in my list of criteria of should you take the job is it offers experience. But there's an important caveat there. It offers experience in the direction that you want to go. Now, there's almost anything is going to offer experience if you're doing a job, but you got to be careful in terms of what kind of experience it's going to be. And I'll go over that a little bit more in the next step. But this is a tarot deck that I just did on Kickstarter. And so it was an interesting one because it gave me all 4 of these. And so you can see how these things are stacking up. So in terms of pay, it was okay. Not great, but not horrible either. Super high level of creativity. I got to really, really just make almost anything that I want to. I mean, the whole thing is basically a portfolio piece. Broad reach, I was able to kickstart it pretty well. And, I do a lot of art shows and I travel a lot. And so I think that the reach is medium. I wouldn't say it's super high, but it's medium. But the experience to put a project like this together, where the total card count is going to be 78 cards, and they're loosely tied together with a narrative, but it's not like a picture book where there's a story going through it, is experience that I wanted to work with. And I also wanted experience in learning, do I want to continue working for existing clients like publishers and things like that, or advertising clients or graphic designers or whatever? And would I rather make my own product? And so that's the big thing that I was thinking here is like, this is a chance for me to not only do something creative, have a pretty good reach and maybe some decent pay, but the experience of making my own product, doing all the packaging, working with the printers, working with stores and trying to get them in stores and what that's like. Just a huge range of experience in the direction that I want to go. Now, I'll just give you an example of experience that you really need to think about, or maybe you don't want to go. If you wanted to be a children's book illustrator and say you got the offer to do, let's say, production work at an animation studio full time, that gives you experience, but is it giving you experience in children's books? Not that you definitely shouldn't take that job, but we'll talk a little bit about why you shouldn't take that job. But it's just not the same thing, just on the surface level. And so is it experience in the direction you want to go? And if the answer to that is a solid yes, then you should definitely take it. Number 5, is it a low risk in terms of time and commitment? So if you are just doing a single image and maybe it doesn't pay well, maybe it's medium level on the creativity scale, all these first 4 aside, once you get to the 5th one, if it's going to be just a single image or 2, then you can go ahead and do it without fear of it bogging you down too much. So low risk in terms of time and commitment. If it's just a single one, I'll do it. I'll do it for sure. And so this one was a book cover series for old classics. So this was Lord of the Flies. It didn't pay well, but it offered a great range of creativity. I was really interested in doing single images and like book covers. That's one of my favorite things to do, where you're not taking a character through a bunch of different images. So definitely an area I wanted to go. The reach on this one was mild, not huge. And it did give me experience doing more book covers. I haven't done a ton of them, but I do want to do more of them. So it gives me some experience. And The time and risk factor, though, if I got in and I did a couple of these, or even one or two of them, and hated it, I was out just like a couple of days. No big deal. So I could easily say yes to this job. And, maybe you get into it and you say, you know what, it wasn't that creative, or I didn't really enjoy the experience. And then I would bail on it. But since it's low risk in terms of time and commitment, super easy one to say yes to. That's for sure. So I'll show you now, as we go through this, some examples and show you kind of how I weigh them. So I have like a 1 to 10 scale on each one of these different things, and you can evaluate it. The big criteria for me is hopefully it hits 3 of the 5, and it hits at least 3 of the 5 with like a level 8 out of 10. And so this was a promo that I did with my agent in connection with the opening of the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie a while back, a couple years ago. And it was super fun. It was just this little tie-in with the release of the movie, and so it offered zero pay. It was a promotional thing through my agent, and so I wasn't getting paid anything. I could do whatever I want to, though. So level 10 out of 10 in terms of creativity. The reach was super broad because they were submitting it to all these different clients that are exactly the clients that I am looking for, both in entertainment design and publishing. So the reach was fantastic because it was exactly what I wanted to do. The experience, again, going back to the book covers, I'm looking for these single image poster kind of ideas or a book cover idea. So this could easily be a book cover. So it gave me great experience in doing that. And then in terms of the risk, it was just a single image. And so this is how it kind of landed on this scale. So you can see it's a 100% yes on this one. Didn't pay well. You're never going to get a 10 out of 10 all the way down. If you did get a 10 out of 10 all the way down, that would be the most unique job experience I think I've ever seen. Maybe you'd have to be like really high senior level illustrator. Maybe gets that if you write your own story and then you get paid a bunch of money for it. Maybe that's one. Let's go down to some other ones. So this is a good one. Illustrating a self-published picture book. This one comes up more often than any for the people that send me emails and ask questions about should they take the job. It's a tricky one. So typically the pay, you can see on the left-hand side, does it pay well? Typically not. They're notoriously cheap, and it's because authors are trying to pay for this themselves. I can sympathize with that after doing the Kickstarter. When you got to pay for all your printing and storage and shipping and all that stuff, you get a little bit more stingy than you otherwise would like. But it doesn't change the fact that illustration is really hard, and you should be paid well for it, in my opinion. So I'm going to say 0 out of 10 in terms of on a 0 to 10 scale of whether a self-published picture book pays well. The creativity is a variable. Some of these I'm just putting a number in because, obviously it's going to vary depending on the manuscript that you got. But some of them are more creative than others. If it's one that's right up your alley, that would be a 10 out of 10. Typically, though, your experience with a self-published author, they sometimes they tend to over art direct. And so the creativity goes down because you're being sort of led a little bit more than you would with a traditional publisher. Not all of them are going to be that way, but I'm just saying in general. So the creativity can go down. You might think a story is creative, but it's not when somebody's telling you, okay, there needs to be a house over here and a character on the left, and they're doing this. It takes down the creativity. So that's just something you know from experience from seeing so many people try to illustrate self-published books. The reach is going to be really, really low in terms of exposure because a lot of times they don't end up in bookstores, and they always say, oh, it's going to be on Amazon, but the placement on Amazon, go on to Amazon, see if any self-published books come up for you. They probably aren't going to. Experience, again, this one's variable. It will get you some experience doing books. Like say you want to be a children's book illustrator and somebody's offered you a self-published picture book. Why wouldn't that be a 10 out of 10? Well, unless the story is right up in line with what you're going to do, you may not get the experience that you want. Again, because you don't have an art director that's experienced. You're not working with maybe an edited manuscript. And so the story can be all over the place. So yes, you're illustrating a book. Is it the same as illustrating a book for a publisher? Sometimes not. So I just put a 7 out of 10 there. I'm leaning in favor of it. in that particular instance. It can go either way. Number 5, though, is risk in terms of time and commitment. You get a 0 out of 10 there because a book takes a ton of time. I mean, it takes way longer than most people think it does. And so if you're all in and, you can see these other numbers, they're not super high, but you've now committed yourself for a long period of time. There's a big danger there. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and this is maybe one of the most important parts of this video, in addition to giving you this handy dandy little chart over here, the scale, and that's talking about opportunity cost. So if you're not unfamiliar with that term, opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. That's just a fancy way of saying when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to a bunch of other things. And so if you said yes to doing a self-published picture book, but doesn't pay well, the creativity may be marginal, reach is low, it may not be exactly what you want in terms of experience, and the time commitment is big. What I always ask new illustrators or illustrators going into children's books, with this one in particular, is would your time be better spent doing other promo samples that aren't maybe art directed by a self-published author, or something that's exactly in line with what you're doing? Because then you can start to get into the exact spot you want to in terms of the market and the industry and making the portfolio that you want. And so that's always my argument there is, unless it's going to give you portfolio pieces that match exactly what you would send out, like actual samples that are high quality that you could send to clients, I would say don't take the self-published picture book. Again, there's some that are going to be okay, but most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, your time is going to be better served by making a custom portfolio and sending it to a direct, a custom-built kind of client list that matches your work. That's going to be a much better and effective use of your time. So here's a book, we're talking about self-published authors. This is a book that I did last year or 2 years ago for a real publisher, and it came out, and it took about, I'd say probably a year to make this one. It was really, really tough. But, going through my little chart over here, does it pay well? It was pretty good. 8 out of 10, I would say. Other people do get more than that, but it's more than a lot of people get. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I had full freedom on how I did this book, all 32 pages, and so 10 out of 10 for creativity. The reach was big because it was well-known song was what the lyrics were, and then well-known writers, and so the reach was big, and it was promoted. It went in all the bookstores around the world, and so big, broad reach. The experience, though, I've done a lot of books, and so my experience it didn't change. Like, taking this job didn't give me a ton of new experience. And that's sort of how to look at that category as, yes, I got experience. I did a book, but I've done a bunch of books. And so unless the experience is new, something that you have never done or you're uncomfortable doing or unfamiliar with, it's not going to be that high in that rating. In terms of risk, of time and commitment, it's a 0 out of 10. It took a massive amount of time, took a massive amount of effort. But again, looking at this one, they're not all going to be high, but this one does hit 8 out of 10 here, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, good enough for me in those situations. And so there's never going to be a black and white, you should definitely do it or you definitely shouldn't. This is a way to parse through the gray area and figure out if something's going to be right for you. And should you take something and say yes to it, again, going back to opportunity cost, or would your time be better spent doing something else? And so the idea of that, it took me probably 10 years to figure that out, that when you say yes to one thing, you're like, oh, I'm just illustrating this thing. Seems like a good idea. I'm an illustrator. Now I'm stuck in this job that I shouldn't have been doing, and I should have focused my efforts elsewhere, and I would have gotten ahead that way. And so hopefully you guys can use this and figure out whether you should take a job. Again, it's not black and white, but it just gets you, it gives you a framework, I guess, to deal with the question. So that's going to do it for now. If you found these tips helpful, you can check out a lot more stuff at svslearn.com. I have a ton of classes over there along with a lot of other great illustration teachers. I do have a link in the description if you want to go check it out. We do have a free trial. So go check it out. There's a ton of classes with all kinds of stuff for you to see about illustration. And I really want to thank you for watching this video. I'd love to hear your comments. If you guys have other criteria for taking jobs, go ahead and put it in the comments. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys later.